In 22 BC, Rome stood at a crucial crossroads. Although the civil wars had ended, the Republic had fallen, and the Roman people looked toward one man to maintain order: Augustus. His rule brought peace and stability, yet beneath the surface, old republican ideals simmered, and whispers of absolute power spread throughout the streets and Senate chambers. When the opportunity came for Augustus to seize dictatorship, he made a surprising move. With the power within his grasp, he refused it. This decision wasn't an act of modesty but a calculated strategy, cementing Augustus's legacy as a cunning ruler who reshaped Rome while carefully balancing appearances. Through this tale, we journey into the heart of Augustus's political mind, the Senate's scheming, the people's growing anxiety, and the subtle interplay of ambition, power, and perception. The political climate in 22 BC. The state of Rome. The Republic's collapse. By 22 BC, the Roman Republic had already crumbled, though its institutions still existed in name. The Senate continued to convene, elections were held, and magistrates assumed office. But the reality was clear: Augustus held supreme power. Following years of civil war and unrest, Rome was exhausted. The people yearned for peace and stability, something Augustus provided. The fear of tyranny. Rome's collective memory was haunted by the specter of Julius Caesar's dictatorship and assassination in 44 BC. Caesar's rule, and his subsequent death at the hands of those who feared tyranny, taught Augustus an invaluable lesson: avoid the trappings of overt power. The Roman people despised tyranny, and Augustus needed to walk a delicate line between being a ruler and a tyrant. Augustus's grip on power. The first settlement, 27 BC, 5 years earlier, Augustus had orchestrated the first settlement, a brilliant piece of political theater. He restored the Republic, giving back power to the Senate and the people while retaining significant influence over provinces and military forces. The Senate, in return, granted him titles like princeps, first citizen, and imperator, ensuring his supremacy without the title of king or dictator. Unrest and political instability. Despite Augustus's efforts to maintain peace, the city of Rome was still unstable in 22 BC. Grain shortages threatened the public's mood, leading to riots and public unrest. Elections were increasingly marred by corruption, and factionalism within the Senate remained an issue. The city cried out for firm leadership, someone who could restore order. The offer of dictatorship. The Senate's proposal. In the midst of this unrest, the Senate and Roman people approached Augustus with a bold request. They begged him to take on the dictatorship. This offer reflected both fear and pragmatism. They wanted him to assume absolute control, believing that only Augustus had the authority and influence to restore order during the crises threatening the capital. Dictatorship, in Roman tradition, was an emergency position granted to a single individual during times of extreme crisis. However, it carried dangerous connotations. Julius Caesar had accepted the title for life, which led directly to his assassination. Would Augustus follow in his adoptive father's footsteps? Augustus's dilemma: public perception versus power. Augustus knew that accepting the dictatorship would confirm what many already feared: that he was nothing more than a king in disguise. On the other hand, refusing the offer outright risked appearing indifferent to the needs of Rome in a time of crisis. He needed to strike a balance that satisfied the people's hunger for leadership without undermining his carefully crafted image. Influence over reality. Augustus understood that power was about perception. He already held control over the military, the provinces, and the machinery of the state. Accepting the title of dictator would change little in practical terms but would destroy the illusion of the restored republic that he had so painstakingly cultivated. The public refusal of dictatorship. Augustus's speech to the Senate and people. In a carefully staged moment, Augustus addressed the Senate and the people of Rome. He humbly declined the offer of dictatorship, claiming that it was against the principles of the republic and unnecessary given the stability of his government. His words were measured and deliberate. I have no need of extraordinary titles, nor should the Republic be diminished by the ambitions of one man. The stability of Rome lies in the hands of all her citizens, not in a crown upon my head. The public's reaction. The people's reaction was mixed. On one hand, they admired Augustus's humility. His rejection of the dictatorship seemed to signal that he respected Roman traditions and republican ideals. On the other hand, many citizens were frustrated. They longed for decisive leadership amid grain shortages and civil unrest. They needed a ruler, not a symbol. IV. Behind the scenes, a masterstroke of political strategy. Augustus's true power remains untouched by refusing the dictatorship. Augustus strengthened his grip on power. He knew that true authority lay not in titles but in control over the army, the provinces, and the flow of resources. His position as princeps already granted him near absolute control, without the risks associated with dictatorship. Consolidating authority through subtle means. After refusing the dictatorship, Augustus found more subtle ways to exercise control. Grain distribution. Augustus took personal responsibility for resolving the grain crisis, winning public support without needing the title of dictator. Moral authority. His reputation as a savior of Rome grew. Augustus's ability to reject power while still wielding it made him even more beloved. Use of trusted allies. He empowered close allies, such as Agrippa, to manage military affairs, ensuring his policies were implemented effectively. The aftermath and legacy of the refusal. Augustus's image as a benevolent leader refusing the dictatorship in 22 BC became one of the most defining moments of Augustus's career. He presented himself as a reluctant ruler, a man who governed not for personal ambition but for the good of Rome. This image allowed him to maintain control while avoiding the pitfalls of tyranny. A template for future emperors. Augustus's rejection of the dictatorship set a precedent for future emperors. Many of his successors would follow his example, ruling as first among equals, rather than overt tyrants, at least in appearance. However, not all would be able to balance power and humility as effectively as Augustus did. The transformation of the Republic. Although Augustus refused the title of dictator, the Republic was never truly restored. His reign marked the beginning of the Principate, a system where emperors ruled behind the facade of republican institutions. Augustus's genius lay in making the people believe they still had a republic, even as he exercised complete authority. Conclusion. A calculated rejection in 22 BC, Augustus's decision to refuse the dictatorship was a masterclass in political strategy. Far from being an act of humility, it was a calculated move that allowed him to maintain power without provoking resentment or fear. His rejection reassured the Roman people and Senate that he was not another Julius Caesar, even as he tightened his grip on the empire. Through this act, Augustus reshaped Roman politics, establishing a system where power was wielded subtly, without grand titles or overt displays. His reign became the model for future emperors, blending ambition with restraint, control with humility. This moment encapsulates the essence of Augustus's rule, a delicate dance between power and perception, a legacy that would define the Roman Empire for centuries to come.